Hello, it's great to have you join us on Senate 109. My name is Victor Azu. Welcome. Now, the 8th Senate passed the highest number of bills in Nigeria's legislative history. Yet, the same Senate also had an unprecedented number of bills denied assent by the President, but with good reasons.
So many of the reasons, either constitutional infraction or existing law on the matter, or being outside the legislative competence of the National Assembly, or drafting errors, or cross-referencing, or being the amount of money needed being excessive, or not being a matter within the legislative competence. So many, those were the varied reasons that were given in each of them, and it depended quite on each of the bills. But those that were passed by the Assembly, and they had conference, and both chambers agreed on the same version, but are yet to be transmitted to the President. They can still be transmitted, and Mr. President can still assent to them, but within a reasonable time. Now, every bill that stood on the floor of the Senate or House of Representatives, which there were any difference between the version of the House and the version of the Senate, cannot be forwarded, because that is not a bill that is passed by the National Assembly, and it has lapsed. It has to be commenced de novo, that is afresh and from the beginning. That's one. Two, every other bill that didn't quite progress, it can no more progress. It has to be started de novo, except the National Assembly may want to invoke one of the provisions which we state that if it got to a particular stage, they may, being a new assembly, start at the stage of committee of whole. If a motion is moved and it is known that a majority of the members are conversant with the subject matter and it had gone so far on the floor of the legislature. But if they don't accept, then it has to start first reading, second reading, and take the whole hog.
Now, so what can be done? You've been in the Senate yourself, now you're presidential liaison. What do you think needs to be done? You have given quite a number of reasons, a plethora of reasons for that matter. What do you think needs to be done to improve on the crafting of bills and correcting all the reasons you have given for which Mr. President did not assent to these bills?
First, I won't say capacity building on the part of the staff, because the staff are just support. I will not say so. I will say that the legislators owe a duty to this country. Their job is full-time. There are 360 in the House, 109 in the Senate. They have to ensure that every bill they pass, they see every word, every sentence, like we used to do at Committee of Whole. They look at it and proofread. They don't have to make the secretariat, their staff, the legal drafting department, to be the legislature for the country. They have to sit and know that it is a full-time job. That is why they are not just lawyers, they are engineers, they are doctors. So that any matter and any bill that affects a particular profession and a particular field, there are professionals to give input on that, on what is appropriate in that field, and the proper word, the proper wording, the proper concept of it. So the legislature, with respect to them, have to go back and do the work of the legislature. They don't have to depend exclusively on their staff, on the legal department, on the committee secretariat. Yes, they should, but even when the secretariat brings the work, you have to do the job yourself, because you are the legislature. The Constitution and the law did not give a role to the committee clerks, did not give a role to the legal department. It gave a role to the clerk to the National Assembly and the legislators. So in between, all these persons in between the clerk and the National Assembly and the legislature themselves, you take responsibility. The others are just persons who are supposed to do some work, but you ultimately take responsibility.
Now, seeing that drafting errors was one of the reasons given by Senator Enang, we decided to seek legal guidance on what should have been and what the Ninth Senate needs to do to avoid a similar pitfall.
A cursory look at the activities of the National Assembly, and by that I mean both the Senate and the House of Representatives. In the past, we rarely see bills with errors, because Of course, there are paid staff in the National Assembly who are draftsmen. They call them legislative draftsmen, who are supposed to, when a bill is proposed and in the Rules Committee, send to them to knuckle it up, and then to see first, apart from determining where it's best suited, but then to look at the quality of the bill and whether or not it requires correction. They do that. Now, even in chambers, we first draft document, we file in court, and then we'll argue it. If your document is not properly prepared, it's likely going to affect your case in court. In the same way, in legislative drafting, if there is an error, that bill consequently, when it becomes an act, it will have problem, because implementation of that law will then create dispute. That's why when somebody goes to court, you say he's citing the section of the law to say whether there is a violation or there is no proper adherence to the rules there. And once there is an error on a bill, it creates what we call technicality. You see that the spirit and the letters of the assembly is this, but because it is wrongly couched, somebody can then lay hold on that technical problem and then have the whole thing foisted. I don't want to be particularly indicting of some of the staffs of the National Assembly, but I think that this error was mostly seen between 2015 to 2019, this last National Assembly. And in my view, it is obviously because they were distracted by these executive legislative battles that they were not prepared to sit down and have it right. Because oftentimes when they sit in their plenary, you will see them condemning documents emanating from the executive. It is purely because these draftsmen in the National Assembly are not doing a thorough job. And that is the reason why we have so much of bills that were sent to the executive returned on obvious errors on the face value. The requirement is, apart from having your in-house draftsmen, it is expected that every senator should have an external consultant. Every House of Rep member should have an external consultant, whether a law firm or an individual, knowledgeable in constitutional law. So that if you are proposing a bill, for instance, you come up with the skeleton idea of what you intend to push. Your paid staff are able to knuckle it to the shape you wanted. You have to, even after they have drafted it, give it to external consultants who are experts in constitutional law to have a look at it. Because there are lots that is involved in bill. Number one, what is the intendment of the legislators? Number two, their intent, is it conveyed in that legislation? And then number three, what are the possible problems that this bill is likely going to be confronted with? And have they provided? So take, for example, if it is a criminal law, you're coming up with offense. The requirement of the law is that nobody will be prosecuted for any crime until that crime is first defined in a law and the punishment is prescribed. So assuming now you are Senator A.B. Square and you are trying to propose a bill for punishing somebody, you are able to carefully craft out the offense, but your draftmen are unable to prescribe the punishment. So you see, you've crafted the anti-terrorism law and then you push it and it is passed as a law. Now, if the accused person is charged to court and prosecuted on the account of that bill, it is going to be dead on arrival, because the law's requirement is that nobody will be convicted of a crime until that crime is defined in a legislation and the punishment is prescribed. I'll just give you an example of a criminal law. So it applies even in civil cases. And then you look at the possible problems that this bill is going to be confronted by, and then think of how to ameliorate this problem. This is how proper drafting is done with respect to bills that will end up becoming laws. So whether it is coming directly from the legislators themselves under Section 4, carrying out their function under Section 4, or is coming by way of executive bills. Because even when executive bills come to the National Assembly, when it comes to the respective heads of the House, they will still have to take it down to the Rules Committee, who will then have to look at it and see which relevant committee the bill is meant for. And then when you take it, they will begin to look at it. So in a nutshell, I think that we had that problem from 2015. I am looking forward to a robust and flawless lawmaking in the 9th Senate.
Well, it does seem that returning senators have learned from the experience and are better prepared to go one step further. We spoke with some of them, including President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan.
When an assent is withheld by the president, what that tells you is the president or the executive had gone through the bill or bills and with the expectation that the president will sign, will assent, and then something maybe that could not allow his assent was observed. So that tells you that there is willingness on both sides. There is willingness, there is desire and ability to pass bills by the Senate, the Senate, and that there is willingness also and desire by the executive to assent to those bills sent from the National Assembly. But then every bill that the president withheld his assent, the president explained or made observations on why he will withhold his assent. And the Senate, or indeed the National Assembly, in most cases, would review the observations of Mr. President and carry out the necessary adjustments with a view to meeting some of the corrections that needed to be done, and then would be sent back to Mr. President for his assent. I think with the benefit of hindsight, I would have loved a situation where first the National Assembly sets screening or checkpoints at which bills would have to go through before they are actually finally be on the order paper for consideration. This will require the necessary scrutiny to ensure that the bill or bills do not address issues that are already legislated upon, or that they do not infringe on provisions of the Constitution, or that they do not distract from the functions of an already existing agency or so. So I think we need to do that much more to increase the level of scrutiny before a bill finally finds itself on the order paper or for debate by the National Assembly. On the side of the executive arm of government, I think given a relationship based on that cooperation that is necessary, when a bill is found to have contradictory provisions or deficiencies, I would love to see a situation where the observations raised and the necessity for addressing them are addressed in a better way between the two arms. If it is an agency that is complaining, I believe that the agency should have an interface with the committee that is responsible for that bill. But on the whole, let me emphasize on one thing, that when a bill that is particularly sensitive, crucial, and critical will be passed, and public hearings are selected and announced, it becomes absolutely necessary that stakeholders, especially those in government, are able to attend such public hearings so that their observations are made at that stage. Because on both sides, a lot of resources are committed to working on the bills. The National Assembly commit a lot of resources for the bill to go through all the processes, legislative process in the National Assembly. So that's the executive. It also puts in a lot of resources because it is not just taken to the president for assent and then you say, no, I will not assent to this. If some observations will be made, it means people devote some time and some resources to go through the entire bill sent to Mr. President for his assent. So we need to conserve our very scarce and limited resources by ensuring that we take all the necessary measures and steps to screen the bills, and also when there are few things that somebody would not be comfortable with in an MDA or something, such issues are supposed to be brought before the public hearing, or even after the public hearing, before the final report of the committee is presented to the chambers of the National Assembly.
When the presidency is bringing its bill, if there is good communication, they invite the leadership of the Senate, maybe the Senate President or the Deputy Senate President or even Senate President alone, and discuss with him. This is the bill we are bringing to you, to National Assembly, to the Senate. That this is the bill we are bringing, and this is our reason why we want this bill, so reasons. So the Senate President will collect the bills before it is brought to us. Then he will look at it with his colleagues who are in charge of that committee, give advice, and then go back to the presidency to discuss with them. This is the area of observation we see from the National Assembly. Now they can harmonize that observations, and then the presidency will now bring its harmonized bill to the National Assembly. If that bill comes, already we are aware, the committee, the leadership of the both assembly, the House and the Senate, have seen the bill and made input. So that when it comes to the floor of the Senate, it goes to committee. It will be easy. We do public hearing, we get additional input from the people, the Nigerians, and then we pass the bill, easy. Once that bill is passed, of course, President, before it goes to the President, still there will be discussion before the bill is passed. Would the President say, okay, this observation we see from public Nigerians that they want this also into the bill, then the Presidency will also know that. But then they get that kind of information and the bill is passed from the Senate and the House of Rep, then the bill will simply be passed. It will be like a joint bill by the Executive and the National Assembly. Now, if the bill originates from the Senate or from the House, then that bill, before it is passed, the leadership of the National Assembly, that is the Senate President or the Deputy or the Speaker, they will go in a team to discuss with the President. And President will invite the relevant agencies or ministries to say, this is the bill that the Senate is bringing or the House is bringing. It affects the day-to-day running of the agency or the ministry. If that is done, then there will be discussions between the two. But on both sides, too, we need to look at the criteria or the quality of the bills to be more. Sometimes we reject our bills on the floor of the Senate. We do, sponsored by our members. We do reject the bills because some of the bills are not good enough to even assist Nigerians. But I think with this assembly now, I believe, with the 9th assembly, being that the Senate President being proposed by the party and endorsed by the executive, endorsed by the Senate, then it means the harmony will be more. Therefore, the discussions will be more and closer with the interests of Nigeria. So therefore, we will not, like we did before, create up a bill, do public hearings, spend taxpayers' money, print all those documents, pass it to the House, also do public hearings, and so on. And so that takes a lot of time and also consumes a lot of taxpayers' money. And now we are back to square one. But if there is this rapport, I'm sure we will not have this kind of problem.
The return of bills by Mr. President unassented to is not something unusual. It's not something unusual. It could be for a simple reason of lack of the necessary interface, ab initio, or lack of negotiation, ab initio, that led to that. So in every democracy like ours, it's not something unusual. Once it's brought back, even though it's brought back, it's not the end of the whole process. There could be further negotiation, further, effort to reach, compromise and consensus. Where do you need to take away from the bill? What do you need to add to the bill? And all these things built on compromise and consensus. This is what all the kind of democracy we operate here is all about. So it's not something unusual. So I think what we need to do is to try to see how we can see with the executive once a bill is brought back to strike deal, legislative deal, not a positive legislative deal on what to do so that such bill can be passed eventually. My advice in this respect is to really enforce diligence in the process of bringing out a bill, of dealing with bills in the legislature. All right, and also allow for negotiation. Make the necessary interface between, the executive and the legislature, so that you have less differences that will bring about the non-assent or the refusal of the president to give his assent to such bills. Diligence and negotiation. The chairman and members of these committees should employ due diligence, do proper work, all right, and try to extend their reach to the executive if the bill is emanated from the legislature. All right, the executive has to, if the bill emanated from the executive should also make a kind of first contact. We should make a contact with the legislature to really prepare the ground for the passage of the bill before the process of making that legislation begins. So when you have this kind of interface, you have this kind of interaction, then the issue of non-agreement between the executive and legislature, which is the reason for non-assent of bills, will not even arise.
And that's Senate 109. We'll see you next time. I am Victor Azu.